My name's David Renard. I'm the president of RPM team, and this is my partner, Richard. He's the CEO. We share the last name. He's also my dad. We're representatives of Sprung Structures, but we're also partners that bring the turnkey element to a manufactured product for design, construction, procurement of some other ancillary support modular facilities to get the whole building off the ground, work with operators, work with program developers through all the site design, the floor plan design, and all that kind of stuff, so that we can have a marriage of all these different products working together to add to the healing process of the residents that stay here through dignified space.
What shelter are you showing us today?
So we're at the Cap K shelter, known as the M Street shelter in Bakersfield, that was developed by KERN County. So this was a project that was a partnership and run by KERN County in tandem with Bakersfield and Cap K, who is the operator.
Community Action Committee of KERN County.
And service provider for a lot of the different services down in KERN County, Bakersfield area. What we're at today is the Sprung Structure Navigation Center. So that's what we usually call a building that pairs dormitory style sleeping quarters with wraparound services. Cafeteria, dining, case management, counseling, medical, dental, training, job training, navigating the affordable housing process.
Most outputs of Navigation Center are to take the guests into what we call transitional housing, which would still have wraparound services. This center actually is graduating people straight into permanent housing. Think of Sprung as a blank canvas, and that it's going to be painted based on the needs of the clients, based on the city and the county and the partners that are involved, the space available. This is a very unique Sprung structure in that it's, instead of just saying, well, I have, a certain size modular that is going to be put here. This was engineered from the amount of space to maximize the footprint. So that's where the various sizes within the Sprung family really comes into play. And then you begin to paint the canvas by putting all the pieces together.
RPM stands for Rapid Program Management, because a lot of the shelter projects have accelerated timelines. They might take a few years to develop, but that's because of the coordination between cities or counties, continuum of cares, funding sources, grant writing processes, and all that kind of stuff. But then once everything kind of reaches the starting line, there's 3 months to execute, because it's usually going up against winter or possible funds expire at a certain point. So because of that, almost every, shelter project that we've been involved with has been, you need to finish under 5 months. So rapid program management then encompasses a term that is not widely used in construction. That's program management, right? And program management is, we're taking a dirt field or a green field, and then we have to develop the project from there. And developing it is adding additional affordable modular solutions that are going to feed off of a really large, great open space. Then from there, you're running procurement, you're estimating, you're getting all the manufacturers together. Then you're also building the design team. So that's where we come in, and then we extend our designer network, and that's architectural, civil, structural, MEP. You can even go landscape and fire sprinkler design if that's not done on a deferred submittal. And then from there, we go to our contractor network to help estimate the costs up front so that we can actually build in a number of different ways. We can do a design build contract. We can do a sole source contract. We can actually just act as people that help fill in the gaps. Because on the other side of the spectrum, you have cities and counties that have their on-call contractor staff that they like using, or they'll have their on-call architectural and engineering teams that they like using. But those people don't build homeless shelters every day. So it gets really interesting. Sometimes they're required to use them, but they don't have that design experience or expertise of looking at the site, maximizing that site square footage for covered space, and then figuring out how to marry other manufacturers to keep the overall cost way down than the kind of traditional status quo. It's a hybrid role, because even if we're not under contract by city or funded by the city, we're able to point them in the right direction to help them make their project a reality. We're here to fill in the gaps.
Right now, within the homeless housing solution era, we're missing some pieces. This is an anomaly currently. And it's only been through David's experience with Sprung prior to the creation of RPM, where he spent a decade building these structures and building navigation centers and building barriers, whether it's a low barrier or a high barrier. Whatever the complexity might be, is to understand the pitfalls, because all of a sudden you may have a permit person or a building person or a development person, and all it takes is one misstep and everything could be set back a month.
Yeah.
And it's not for lack of desire or lack of training, lack of any, it just, all of us, there's a pitfall. That pitfall now has to, oh gosh, now we got to go back before the council. We've got to re-engage them. We've got to resubmit paperwork and this kind of a thing. And what RPM does is to help navigate all of that.
And so RPM, when was it founded, and how many projects have you now worked on? And
before I answer the question, I'll give a little bit more context.
Okay.
So I used to work for Sprung Structures, and we're going back 10 years now. And from Sprung Structures, I think that the first homeless shelter project that we were involved with is right when Sprung was starting to be used in Southern California. I was spearheading the project for Fresno Rescue Mission. And their facility had to be relocated because of the California high-speed rail. So helped manage that project. That was modular trailers by Kitchens to Go, and Sprung working in tandem. So Sprung was used for the chapel and the dormitory, laundry, and the bathroom facilities. And the Kitchens to Go was the cafeteria and a large portion of the administration offices. Okay, look, Dad, look at this project that I'm working on. He's like, all right, cool, you know, that's great. Doesn't it feel nice to get back? And I'm like, yeah, it really does. So it really didn't hit me for a while until you know, the relationship with all the stakeholders of the rescue mission flowered into a great friendship. And they invited me to their gala that they have every year. And I had no idea what it was. And I get there and it's a graduation. And so every year they graduate classes because it's an outcome-based model. And I've never seen anything like this. It's been going on. I didn't pay attention. You know, I'm a young kid at this point. But when you see the outcomes and you see the families there and you see the story, because they give stories of each person, what their life was like, why it got to this point. And now they go to the rehabilitation process, and now they're back to being, you know, a blossoming flower within society. And like that, it hit me like a ton of bricks. San Francisco was testing the waters from the navigation center model, right? And so San Francisco, where it started with Newsom, it was care, not cash. So they're looking at more than just, you know, feeding and providing services, but like, let's track it. What kind of impact is it going to make on their life? So then they start doing the navigation center model, and they started with modular trailers. There were some complaints, and I'm not knocking them in any way. It's very fast, it's very affordable, and it's very modular and temporary in nature and can be moved around. But they wanted to look at Sprung. So I was on the committee and the stakeholders that helped develop that entire project team from working with Sprung Structures. And so it was really great, because this is where I'm really starting to learn that the shape of the structure, like we had mentioned before, where you can do hangars, churches, Indian gaming, warehouses, you know, the applications are endless.
You have ladies and gentlemen that have been on the street for multiple years, and you want to bring them inside. And if they're in more of a containment, or even in an office like this, it's 10 by 10, and they get jittery, they're not expecting, they've been used to expanse. And what was brilliant about the application of Sprung's, and they go back 20 years for homeless and recovery sort of deals. But what we discovered in San Francisco is when they walked into this place, just the size of it, the openness, the light, it was revelatory. They were able to relax, they were able to receive, they were able to give, because it's just the scope of it, which you'll get to experience here in a little bit, but the scope of it is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And so once the building was operational, then, now we had residents using it. And so when I would walk through with, City of San Francisco Public Works, so that was the actual client, you would have the residents come up and be like, oh, I heard you're with Sprung. They're like, this place is revolutionary. We don't like going to the other shelters because they're dark or they're claustrophobic. We like this expansive space. And I'm just kind of going like, oh my gosh, this is, I mean, revelatory, like you mentioned, for me. And I'm going, wow, this is really special. Sprung Structures are a blank canvas, but the design of these buildings in this shape, which was the product of being a universally code compliant structure, is also conducive to the healing process of giving people hope and getting people back on track. And so that was a big wake up call for me. So then a couple of navigation centers later, my father gets involved, my brother gets involved. I now start to realize that as the manufacturer, you're just the manufacturer. And so you are building all these project teams from the contractors and the designers and things of that nature. And then we started to embark in the private sector. In the private sector, I mean privately funded homeless shelters. And I did not like what I saw. So you saw design contracts that were probably 3 times more than they should be, because the manufacturer's designing most of everything, right? There's not much creativity they can still, but they still want to put their stamp on it. So I started to think about it and, was talking to people, talking to Sprung. So I left and I joined a design firm and took an executive role there. And from there, we started to create a program management division dedicated to homeless. And from there, we did some more projects, this one, Sacramento. And then I had another revelation where it's still another private entity that I can't control, and it's on the growth track. And I'm realizing that when you're so growth obsessed, you forget about serving. And that's kind of like the mark that we want to make in this space, is that we're not trying to be, there's the train. We're not trying to be this huge, fastest growing company or anything like that. We want to try to house as many people as possible throughout the whole West Coast without having to scale back services just because the project teams that cities have assembled can't meet the budget. And that's the biggest fire that got lit in me in the last year when I saw that in a certain city that, it probably, shouldn't mention. But when I'm able to step in and go, you're thinking about the design wrong, and you're thinking about the other services that you're offering wrong, I mean, that's a wrong way to put it. But if you kind of...
There's ways to improve the way that you're doing the design and...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I could talk forever and for hours about, that process. So because of that, that's when just going like, wow, we're really set up in a different kind of way than a lot of entities, with my dad's experience feeding the homeless, working in the soup kitchen like every week.
Yeah.
And then my talents in the construction and the design space to marry that. So long story short, RPM's new. It was incorporated in 2020. And even being, 1 year old, we're already working on 10 projects that are amounting to over 1,500 beds.
And where are those projects? Are they all in California?
No, Washington, Nevada, Oregon, and California. And this model has effectively lowered the status quo navigation center cost by 50%. These aren't concepts. These are proof of concepts. They have been employed for 20 years. I think that one of the longest ones is on Hawaii, and it's a family rehabilitation center.
Yeah.
It's been there for 20 years. And so they have done applications that serve people that are experiencing homeless internationally. Canada, the US, the Middle East, refugee camps, Puerto Rico, Guam, Costa Rica, and the Virgin Islands. So it's a 130-year-old family-run, fourth-generation business that has always been involved in fabric structures. And that's really unique because nobody else has 130 years experience perfecting it to the number of bolts that get on site. And I want to lay that context first before we talk about what's the percentage breakdown of what needs to be assembled on site and what doesn't. And it just kind of goes to like where we want to, change the whole model from materials and fabrication to products and installation, because the whole genesis of Sprung starts with an aluminum I-beam. I think that was a pretty well put introduction. So this has all the parts needed to create indefinite lifespan tension membrane structure that does not require maintenance. And that's really unique to hear. People aren't used to hearing that kind of thing, especially with a tension membrane building, or what they could refer to as a fabric building, or what they could refer to as a tent. It's not called sprung tents, it's sprung structures for a very specific reason. Now, why aluminum? Lifetime metal. It gets stronger with age. Also, it allows for an all-bolt assembly, so there's no on-site welding. That's huge. When you're dealing with public projects, prevailing wage rate, it has different labor classifications, right? Think general labor, carpenter, ironworker. So if you're going to be doing welding, you got to go up to that level. We eliminate all of that. And then the way it's tension is it's all from one piece. It's not like the other fabric buildings where they have an I-beam and then they sandwich the membrane between another flat plate. It's extruded, and that's why they use aluminum. So they can extrude that shape onto one piece of metal. And that's why it's so strong, and that we can do spans, width spans, up to 160 feet. So it's important to note that all of this is in one piece because it's less moving parts. And that's kind of what adds to a maintenance-free building. Now, on the skin, the weather barrier element of the structure, it's the same sort of membrane that's used in TPO roofing, right? And so now we want to go quantify how this is an indefinite lifespan building when everyone just looks at it and goes, tent, and this is how it works. You're re-roofing traditional construction every 30 years. With the sprung structure, you're re-skinning it every 30 years. So because the substructure metal is aluminum and that's going to last forever, then therefore you have a lifetime building. New skin is added. So now we have a third layer of protection over the base fabric. So it's like really ingenious. So for the first 30 years, you have that membrane. Then once it starts to fade, then what we do is we add another piece of the extruded channel on the exterior and then lay it that way. And it's this really trick way of tensioning that now third layer of skin. So in the next round of 30 years, you're just replacing that third layer of skin. And why that's important is because you don't have to do anything on the inside of the building. So it's
so it doesn't affect operations.
Exactly.
No.
You can reskin it and not shut down the building. But when we're talking about lifespan, I also want to bring up warranties. So Sprung warranties the membrane for 25 years. And then they warranty the substructure for 50 years. So that's quite a... That's confidence.
That's confidence.
Confidence, right?
Yeah.
And then, the whole reskinning technology, that's the 130 years talking right there. This is a really great exercise in maximizing the space that's here. So we had a rather narrow lot. Just have to make sure that we maintain our setbacks and all that kind of stuff to fit as much structure as we can as possible. But behind me, you'll see the general profile of a sprung structure. They're all going to look like this shape. It's all by design. It's a fun way to say it. So there is a 26-degree slope, and that's so it can be placed anywhere in the world.
and deal with the heaviest snow loads of Lake Tahoe and the highest wind speeds of Costa Rica, Puerto Rico. So they're rated, they can go up to 155 mile an hour, 3-second gust. And that's crazy to think with a pre-engineered building first, and then of course a fabric membrane, tension membrane structure.
Why is 26 degrees the sweet spot? That's how that snow doesn't stick or something, or what's
Really,
the significance?
exactly. So we start with snow because that's going to be the toughest one to battle. So the 26-degree slope is what it's been found is that under heavy snowfall, once enough snow is on that center bay or enough snow is collected on that panel, the weight of the snow breaks the cohesive bond with the membrane. And then the 26-degree slope pushes it off. So the buildings are designed to shed snow. And because of that design, they're able to, I think the highest snow load we've done is a 450 PSF, which is really crazy to think about. So we're talking about structures in like Squaw Valley, Alpine Meadows, Heavenly, Homewood, Sugar Bowl, almost all the ski hills in the Sierra Nevadas. Now, of course, on the wind side, that slope then acts like a spoiler on a race car. So when the wind hits one side and it goes over on the other, it diffuses and it actually helps hold the building down. Now, of course, it's a fabric building. In the design of foundations, we're dealing with uplift, which is unique in the building space. Everyone else dealing with like gravity and dead load, we got to deal with the uplift as well. But because of the aluminum, it still is a lot less weight than steel. So we still have limited foundations. So our foundations costs are way more economical than like a metal building. So behind us is the navigation building. This has the kitchen, the cafeteria, the case management offices, medical, staff bathrooms, and reception operational offices. The dimensions are 60 feet wide, 75 feet long, so it's about 5,400 square feet. And then we're gonna go on this side. And so this is the dormitory. It's 80 feet wide by 105 feet long. So roughly 8,100 square feet. It's designed currently for 150 people for sleep in just your traditional beds with the correct distancing. But what we like to do is we put enough exits in, then we could double the occupancy to 300. And under emergency provisions for buildings like this, the day services are to serve 400 people. So this facility serves 400 people a day.
Oh, wow.
So this is the side of the building, right? See, it doesn't wrinkle like the plastic of when you poke holes that hold water bottles together at Costco. It's not like that. Once again, this is like industrial grade roofing. It's tensioned so well that you can walk on it. If you're driving by, there's no wrinkles in the building. You don't know it's a fabric building. If someone does try to break into a sprung structure from the exterior, you cut it open and you peel it back, you have structural purlins, you have conduit, and you have insulation that you don't know how deep and thick it is. There's not been a successful break-in through the side of an insulated building. It's a 10-inch cavity.
Hand up there.
There's a monkey paw for you.
So you can see the thickness of the walls.
So this is that aluminum I-beam that we were talking about, right? This is one side of it.
Okay.
What's interesting is it's a double wall construction, double vapor barrier. And that's why it's super unique to schools, because when schools are dealing with like rapid construction, they're used to modular trailers. Those don't have the best shelf life or mold mitigation. And when you have a double vapor barrier construction type, you have a zero chance for mold because it's air locked. So no air can get through. And what's really interesting is about how the membrane is tensioned structurally by the beams is it's creating the most airtight construction envelope on the market. We're inside the dormitory at this point. So just real quick, you can see how cool it is with the tall ceiling. Start walking through.
So the point that we were kind of talking about the cavity and all of the sections. So Charlie, it's a 5-layer polyurethane vinyl scrim. That's the membrane, right? And so it has a ripstop technology. If it gets punctured, it doesn't grow from there. The insulation is foil backed because one of the liners, and then the insulation, it creates a double vapor barrier, which is really unique. We were kind of making that point. And then the way that the membrane is actually tensioned structurally by the beams. And what that process looks like is the metal substructure would go up first. It'd be temporarily anchored. Normally it's about 15 feet on center, but it starts at like 14 foot 6 inches. You feed the membrane through those extrusions, then you put hydraulic jacks between the purlins and you push the beams apart from each other. That's how it gets tensioned. And then you lock that in place with the bolt. So the actual tensioning process is creating an airtight lock in those two extrusions. So how does this equate to something that's really interesting? I like to call it a positive side effect of the design, is it's creating the most airtight design in the construction market. So what the data says is, I think it's like 1 to 10, 10 being a failure of just being able to trap or keep any sort of treated air. A metal building comes in at like 8. Conventional construction comes in at 6, 1 to 10 scale, 10 being a failure. The sprung structure comes in at 2.
So what does that mean in terms of either energy efficiency or insulation, or what's the benefit of being airtight?
Right. So you pair that great airtightness with the high R value of the blanket that's in the cavity. And so for buildings of this size, we're dealing with an R25 blanket. The membrane adds an extra R value of 3. So we're really dealing with an R28 envelope paired with the air tightness. And what we found is when we are comparing volume of a sprung to volume of a conventionally built building, the energy usage is 45% less.
Wow.
So your operational cost is just, you're saving so much money just from all of these different elements working together.
Is the blanket that you're putting in the middle, when you say blanket between the double membranes, that's like a, what do you mean by blanket?
Insulation blanket. Just
so that's something you can get in a custom, so you can get that at R40 if you want. The blanket is sort of just the standard insulation material.
Well, it's the blanket that I use the word blanket just because a lot of people go, what do? You spray in the insulation? And that doesn't work because the membrane is going to move and it's going to lose its ductility and it's just going to fall and kind of pile up in the cavity.
Yeah.
So 103 years experience says you want to go with the blanket because it stays in place. Now, the interesting thing about insulation is the more that you compact it, the more it loses its R value. So we can't just go sandwich a bunch of stuff in there and think we're going to get a higher R value out of it. So with these buildings, we're dealing with R28. There is a beam size jump at a width break of 100 feet. So width of 100 and below, it uses this 5x10 beam. Widths of 100 to 160 uses an 8x12 beam. So now we're dealing with a 12-inch cavity. It fits a larger blanket, and that insulation's R30. So then paired with the membrane, we're really talking about R33. Now, your question is perfect because you have different energy codes in different areas. Washington's got a very strict energy code. And there's different ways that we can get around it from variances, but more often than not, what we use is the 8x12 beam. So to answer your question, if we want to get that extra R value, then we just move up in the beam size.
There's no windows on the sides of the building. All of the natural light's coming in through these, I'm assuming the same membrane material, but you just don't have a blanket in between, or what's?
Right. So what we're also doing is we're taking out the opaque blackout layer that's in part of that 5-layer vinyl scrim. And so that lets in all this natural daylight behind us. There's no lights on in here and there's no windows. So that also adds to its energy efficiency. We're not getting that much heat loss from not having insulation in the peak, and nor are we getting that much solar gain. In California, we have Title 24. So even with the daylight panel, we still pass Title 24 with flying colors. And then on the energy efficiency side, that daylight panel adds to our LEED certification. So building with sprung
can get you to the silver level with LEED.
Oh, wow.
And of course, all that comes from is like construction waste, logistics to site, energy efficiency, the materials used, carbon footprint of the materials used, and then of course, natural daylighting. We can equip the whole sides with windows, even storefront glazing. So from concrete 8 feet up, we can do storefront glazing. And some shelters in Oregon have equipped that because they just wanted it to look a little bit more refined. When we're going through this, we're really just trying to come up with the most cost-effective solution. So in the dorm areas, we don't usually equip with windows. This building is not equipped for day services. That's why they have the other building over there.
Oh, so there's not any residents in the building right now. The reason why it's empty is because they purposefully empty it every day.
Correct.
Everybody's personal items are here. This facility has storage outside. It also has an animal kennel, but for personal items, they're all on all the beds. So in order to maintain the confidence and the security of personal items, they ask the guests to be out during the day.
That's why the facility's locked. And let's say you do want to come inside, you get escorted to get like a certain thing and get out.
Got it. And then as far as like the capacity here, you mentioned 150 beds. What is this, 8,000 square feet? Is the 150 beds including the bunk beds, or is that just single level cots is 150 designed for?
That was designed for single level cots.
So this design that we're walking around could have 300 people?
Oh, easily, yeah.
Oh, so that's 150 bunk beds, but it's 300
Correct.
mattresses.
We're usually introduced on the ground floor, and we're designing the facility, getting the facility halfway through construction before they even onboard an operator or a service provider, or even issue the RFP. So how do you design a facility without the operator's input? You want to think like them. You got to think about where they're going to park, how they're going to operate it. But then also you want to think about like fire code compliance. You think about future expansion. We have a really big open space. Maybe something happens down the road where maybe we put a mezzanine in here. And so because of that, we want to make sure that we have more than adequate exits. And that's key to your occupancy. So just little tricks like that. So it's just one partition wall. And so, it's not all RPM and Sprung led. The client, the city or the county, they have lots of input. And so they wanted to kind of just have a physical break here. But as you can see, it's unique because in the physical break, we have a physical break, but then also kind of security. So it's still keeping everyone together as a community, but it's also breaking up population by gender.
So the sprung structure is on a poured concrete foundation?
It's a dedicated slab. People call it different things, but the actual like footing detail for the base plates is it's a thickened edge perimeter ring foundation. Some people even call it a grade beam. Some people call it a stem wall.
But this was a specially poured leveled foundation for the structure. It's not like we're propped up on a parking lot right now.
Yeah, good point. That's correct. So what's fun though is Sprung is flexible enough that we could put it on a parking lot. So what Richard was mentioning about Salinas is that building, just because of how fast we were going, it's utilizing the existing parking lot because Sprung has an earth anchor system. That earth anchor system holds down the building based on soil bearing capacity. Now, your floor would then just be that parking lot and that asphalt. So places in San Diego that use Sprung, that's fine because it was such a fast project, an emergency project. We needed to get people out before the rainy season hit. But in Salinas, when the product kind of evolves as they, get to learn how useful and utilitarian the building is, they're going, well, we want an even floor, so we'll go and pour a topping slab just on the interior. Although the base plates still sit on an existing grade, we could put a raised floor on the center with like some self-leveling concrete mix, topping slab, rat slab. People call it a lot of different stuff. So long story short, it would look just like this. And this is a nice sealed concrete. It's a really affordable way to get yourself a flooring system. So we don't really see carpet, laminate, anything like that, because the concrete's washable, it's sealed, it's safe, and it's very economical. I just want to kind of show this detail here. This part moving that way, that's your grade beam or your thickened edge. And that can be anywhere from 18 to 24 inches wide to 18 by 24 inches deep. That's it. It's crazy to think about. That's it. For a building this large, right? That's what Sprung can get away with. And it's all code compliant. Sprung provides all the SCOR, structural engineering package, and then the RPM team comes in and then does the actual foundation design. So it's pretty typical in the pre-engineered space, where the manufacturer will handle the structural engineering package, which is the assembly drawings, calculations from the base plates up, and then rely on outside consultants to finish the rest of the design. Foundations, MEP, civil. I think there's something else that I'm missing. But as you can see now here with the actual finished floor, this is where you can also get creative, where we've seen projects that would have like a raised flooring system, a Portafloor Max system, where you can run electrical utilities underneath it, just adding more to the whole superior interior flexible space planning. Where when you look this way and you have a column-free design, you can do whatever you want with it. And that's why we can design so rapidly and then kind of get flexible halfway through the project if we need to pivot. The structure has a utility load about 2 pounds a square foot, and it sounds light, but in an 8,000 square foot building, that means we can hang 16,000 pounds from it. More than adequate for everything that you want to hang. And one thing to put into perspective is Sprung does a lot of churches and native gaming facilities. They're hanging speakers, light trusses, drop ceilings, architectural features, lots of crazy stuff. So this is peanuts compared to all that. What we have is we have the mechanical ducting system. And what's so fun about this is we usually do duct sock because it's white, it's lightweight, and it really blends in with the rest of the white membrane, but there was a shortage. And so we had to, this is a fast timeline. So we had to pivot, and then we went to spiral duct. And that's why we have that. Now it's kind of cool. It looks like industrial, but I would prefer duct sock. Then the black lines, that's a sprinkler system. And so, once again, like some of the San Francisco navigation centers that we've done, you're really thinking about that, that healing environment. We paint the sprinklers white. The duct is duct sock, so it's white, so it all blends in, and it just looks really cool. The other thing that's being suspended are the lights, and what we'll do is we'll walk out this way, and then you'll see the mechanical systems breaking up the interior of a sprung structure and creating different zones. And so we'll see it once we go in the cafeteria, the sprung full height partition. So it's like a sprung end wall on the inside that helps break up the space. And so we like to do that. Like, let's say if we have a really long facility and we have COVID isolation on one side, and then maybe just, your traditional homeless singles on the other. And then we'll put 2 partitions in the center and then have kind of like an operational chase in the center with windows. Now there's visibility to both sides, but you have the case management offices on the interior. Now, with all of that, you have 3 different zones you can play with.
Fire goes off, does the sprinkler system in the entire building go off? And how did the fire department assess this?
It's actually the fastest process. They're like, okay, your construction type is type 2B construction. You got this much volume. You're going to need this much. It's one of the disciplines that is so specialized that you can't even stamp the plans unless the contractor stamps them. So I'm not an expert on it, but it's actually the one where it's like the fastest through the design process.
Is the sprinkler system?
Yeah.
It's all formalized.
It's all formalized, yeah. Everything is suspended from that aluminum I-beam. And the I-beam has a T-bolt chase on the center, both the exterior and the interior. And so that's a 300-pound bracket. We have 75-pound brackets that will hold sprinkler lines, hold your lights, suspend the ducting. As you can see, all of that, if we kind of go up here, it's all suspended from that beam there. We have the mechanical system ducting in. You almost had it right there. So we have the mechanical system ducting in to make clear there. And so the way that this is supported is all the weight is being suspended from the beams up there, and then it's also being supported on the exterior. Sorry, it's being supported on the exterior through the ground mounted system.
Crossbar, that's what Unistrut is. You can see.
Oh, okay. So that's just how it's being attached and held up.
Yeah, it's just a very universal three-sided tube that is used in so many applications. I just want to reinforce that thought of the blank canvas. That whatever the codes, whatever the requirements, whatever the needs of a city, a county, of a building department, all the stuff that all our contractor friends are always going through is easily met in this building. And there's, you know, you have, I won't say it's an infinitive amount of adjustability on the beams, but it's going to be from where the beam bolts to the floor on one side of the structure, and now you go all the way across to the other side of the structure. You can put mounting screws at any point on that to hold up whatever it is you need to hold.
We have the mechanical units right out here, right? And then we have a corridor going this way that will bring you to the navigation building. We also have a corridor going this way that will bring you to the navigation building. I am someone that doesn't think that mechanical units are pretty, so I always want to hide them. Now, that switch off for this site would mean we want to hide them, I have to shrink the dormitory square footage. And that's not a good trade-off. So the architect makes sure, do we have the correct path of travel around the mechanical unit that's still code compliant? Because we're not cheating any of the building departments. Everything's still got a pass plan check in building review. How it fits on the lot, making sure we have ADA access around the perimeter, making sure that the intent of the operator on their floor plan and how they want to kind of like run the operations is also code compliant. So they're really aiding our manufacturer-led design process. So I wanted to show you the bathrooms, if that's okay. Well, I mean, we have navigation center models where once you're in the dormitory, you walk into a bathroom unit, whether it's going to be a modular trailer or a shipping container, and it's seamless, so you don't notice that you're actually leaving the Sprung footprint. So for Kern County, do have staff bathrooms within the footprint. We'll show you those in a second. What's really interesting about bathrooms, Charlie, and kind of like helping to develop the navigation center model throughout the West Coast, the bathroom approach is almost like a reverse engineered approach. We start with how many people we want to serve. Then we see how much money that we have. And there's different ways to interpret plumbing code per occupancy. That's where, you know, I leave it to my design experts to crunch those numbers. Now, what's interesting is some people, they need to comply with the unisex bathroom. So what that would mean is you can have one site for male, one site for gender, but you also have to dedicate, you know, certain fixtures for unisex. So what we elected to do here is we did 6 unisex ADA bathrooms. I thought that was the best approach. It was also the most economical approach as well. So we relied off a design space modular to help out with that. And then what we did and what we love doing is we start with them and go, hey, tell us about your used fleet. Because we don't have a lot of money. So we went through the used fleet, we reverse engineered it, see what could work. This is what they had in stock. And then we got them paint it the same colors to match it. So now it's aiding to the whole campus feel. And I think that's important because they're called navigation centers. They should be navigation campuses. Campus is a lot more conducive to the growth mindset that these individuals need to start that healing process. Behind me is a shipping container that was retrofitted with showers that was donated. So we just kind of like, we're working within the confines of what we're given. If there's not enough fixtures, there's not enough showers to support the occupant load here. So to reverse engineer it, we timed it, right? It can only be used at certain hours. People have their own individual set schedules. It's not perfect, but allow us to get, you know, 150 bed navigation center going. So with that, that's where the architects kind of come in play, Charlie. That's the value that they serve. We're gonna finish this up in the community area, the cafeteria area. Behind me, that's the full height partition. This is the laundry. So we have on-site laundry here.
Open 24/7?
Yes. So now we're in a kitchen that kind of evolved with the design. It was just going to be a warming kitchen or a prep kitchen. And it really got close to a commercial kitchen, which is great because now we can serve them more with like 3 square meals a day. So if we come this way, we have all the refrigeration units over here. And then back here, we have our prep table. We just have a hand washing sink. We have our three comp sink over here. We got the grease trap. We've got a nice convection oven. And then of course our warming trays over here. So that's a full height sprung partition. Those are windows that go into the operational admin area. We're going to walk through that wall. And we're going to access that. So now we're walking into the administration space. We have an employee break room here. We have the exam room by KERN Medical here. Once you're inside here, you have no idea what kind of building you're in. You just think you're in a traditional building.
Yeah.
All right, we're back to where we started.
Any sites wouldn't necessarily work for this typology? Like would a narrower lot size not work? Is there a minimum width that you need in order to accommodate this sort of kit of parts design from Sprung?
I love the term kit of parts design. I like to use it all the time. No, but you're hitting the nail on the head. If the site is too narrow, Sprung doesn't really work.
If a lot width is any less than 40 feet, Sprung tent would not be recommended?
Correct.
Are the Sprung structures ever 2 stories?
Yeah, David built a church up in Turlock, New Life Church. That's 3 stories inside.
Yeah, so it's
3 full stories.
3 full stories, and there's a 4th level where they put all the mechanical
storage
equipment.
Yeah, mechanicals.
So
and the natural light is coming in
Yeah.
at various parts along the 26.5 degrees.
of Hope, that was the privately funded homeless shelter in Portland. They did a checkered pattern on the membrane, and it does this really cool effect on the interior. In really extreme hot areas, like some of the projects that we've done in the Middle East, we moved the daylight panel from the peak a little bit lower, and that's for solar gain stuff.
Interesting. What's the biggest misunderstood aspect of this shelter? What's the biggest challenge that you see in getting them to adopt this typology?
The thought that we're only a tent.
So the pushback on the construction type of a sprung structure is the perception that it's a tent. And then once they're in an operating one, they're blown away. They're like, you can do what with what? A lot of education and kind of like mind changing of what the navigation center can do for the homeless population in the area, for the community, and how it really can tie a lot of different agencies and entities together. I mean, the people that have the best outcomes are the cities that have really good relationship between the community, the faith community, the city, and the operator.
You have people that believe, well, we need to make this so that it stays up forever, or you have people that just want to see something from a temporary point of view. So all of these, like I said before, all these different walls, the half heights, the 3/4 heights, the full heights, whatever that might be, false ceilings, no false ceilings, this can all be done in a temporary basis. So the building can be picked up, moved, sold, leased back, given away, repurposed. I think that's the thing that really makes the Sprung unique.
The whole impetus of Sprung Structures was created to quickly set up a man camp in the northern tundra in a storm, survive the storm, withstand it, And then at the end of the mine or the oil gas operation, be able to take down the building and relocate it. So what's happened is it's engineered to be permanent, but it's designed to be relocated. And then that's where it gets its temporary nature. And that's why cities and counties really like the Sprung idea, because if you put it up, you know it can last forever. But when it comes to community optics, sometimes the community goes, this shouldn't be a permanent problem, issue, or challenge. We should be able to fix it. So when you have something that looks temporary, then it solves everyone's issues.
Almost answers my next question that I was going to ask, which is, what's the biggest selling point? What's the most innovative thing that sets this apart from the competition? You've sort of recapped that based on its ability to be both portable, but have a permanence and high quality in materials to really get the most out of your dollar. How else did you expand on just the most innovative aspect of this shelter solution?
How fast it can go up. Its speed to erection beats everybody by 60% minimum.
So because of the pre-engineered nature and the universally code compliant nature, Sprung's the only manufacturer that keeps 2 million square feet in inventory. It's the only other manufacturer that can say we can get the building to site in 3 weeks. That's the world's fastest building. Now that's one element of it. It's the lowest cost per square foot for a building type like this. So it's able to keep all the city's budgets, in line, copacetic. Thank you, Dad. And then also it's just the overall design, right? Like that dignified approach and that shape, and that great space that you get on the interior. You see it from the exterior, you're like, oh, okay. And then you get inside, you're like, whoa, you knocks your shoes off.
Yeah, Dick, David, thank you so much for the tour today, giving us a look inside this innovative shelter solution in Kern County. So thanks again for your time.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Charlie. Thanks for getting this going.